Today, we're going to be reviewing 444 Yonge Street, College Park. But before we do that, we're going to have a land acknowledgement.
We acknowledge that land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, the Mississaugas of the Credit, within the territory of Fish with one Spooky Tree.
Thank you, Andrew. I think we're hybrid today, but as I'm not mistaken, all the panel members are in the room. But nevertheless, we'll have a roll call to make sure that all of our voice boxes are still fully functional. And I name you, and we will declare whether you have a conflict of interest or not. So Anna?
Present.
Ema?
And conflict.
Jim Melton?
Present.
Goff?
Present, no conflict.
Heather?
Present, no conflict.
Jessica?
Present, no conflict.
Paul?
Present, no conflict.
Have I missed anyone? I've not missed anyone. All right. Well, thank you for participating. This is a significant project, really, in the history of Toronto. Major project, scale of which we rarely see at the design review panel. This is a zoning bylaw amendment. The first review, 444 Yonge Street, College Park. We have 1 hour and 25 minutes for the presentation. It's a formal review session. There will be a vote taken at the end. Staff have been given 10 minutes for their presentation. This will be followed by 20 minutes for the design team consultant. And after that, there will be discussion. The session is being live streamed on YouTube. It's also being recorded. The recording will be available on the City of Toronto City Planning YouTube channel following the session. I've done the roll call, and you've identified you have no conflict of interest. For panel members, don't forget the staff questions. Remember to provide commentary on issues of concern and of appreciation. For speakers, I'll introduce a 1-minute warning and let you know that time to wrap up. A lot of material here. And finally, we can begin the presentation, but remember the issues for design focus. If you don't have them, I'm going to read them. Issues for design focus: proposed parkland dedication configuration and integration of the public and private spaces. Potential park edge animation through lower and upper ground floor retail program. The completed heritage building and its relationship to the towers above. Interface between heritage building and the new base building facing the park. And finally, skyline presence of the towers when viewed from a distance, including those relevant views found on map 7D of the official plan and at the end of the package that you have received. So with that, we're going to begin the presentations. City presentation. You have 10 minutes.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Johnson. I'm the senior planner in the central section, working with Joanna on the rezoning application at College Park. So the application that we're here to discuss today is the rezoning at 444 College. This is an application for 3 towers of 65, 75, and 96 stories. These would be located above the existing designated heritage building known as College Park, which would form the base of the 3 towers, along with a rear addition for a new base building expansion. In total, there's 22,334 residential units. This includes 210 existing rental replacement units, 34 additional rental replacements within that GFA of those existing ones, and then a balance of 2,090 new dwelling units on the site. There would be 5,500 square meters of cultural space, so this would be the Carlu and some additions to it. There's a 1,400 square meter daycare facility that's proposed. This would be part of the in-kind CBC contribution. There's also space for a 250 room hotel, 46,000 square meters of commercial and retail space, and then 530 square meters is proposed as a parkland dedication to expand College Park at the rear of the building. And obviously the applicant will go into a lot more detail on the components. So just moving on to the next slide in terms of the context, hopefully everyone's familiar with the site. But it's site at the northeast corner of the block, bounded by College Street in the north, Yonge Street in the east, Gerrard Street west in the south, and then Bay Street in the west, with College Park located behind. And in terms of its area, it's about 1.1 hectares or 11,000 square meters. It has a frontage along College of 77 meters and along Yonge Street of 153 meters. So it's a very large site, much larger than we're used to dealing with in the downtown area. Next slide. And in terms of the existing uses on the site and existing buildings, there's, as I was saying, the 7-story commercial building known as College Park. This was constructed originally in 1930 as the Eaton store. And it was designated in 1975. And then in the late 1970s, there was an addition of an apartment building, a rental apartment. This is 10 stories and it has 210 units within the building. So this is shown in the image on the right. And this is a view from the back of the building looking over a sunken plaza from College Park. And you can see the apartment building component there. Next slide. So we'll just get into some of the applicable planning policy. Oh, wait, I'll turn it over to Joanna for existing context. Sorry.
So in terms of the existing context, we just selected some views that will be related to the issues that we're going to present at the end of the presentation. And here on the left-hand side, you have view looking north towards site. On the right-hand side, you have that College Park building with that addition that Paul just mentioned about. And the view is from the College Park. On the right-hand side, there is, in the distance, you can see the mid-block connection connecting Yonge Street and College Park. And also on the right-hand side, you can see our condos, and here is a little bit fragment of that. I think it's a skating rink that is already located in the College Park. Next one is the view of the sunken area from the College Park looking in the distance. The sunken area is attached to the building in the rear. And to the right, you can see a little bit closer the sunken area. And as you see, there is a number of stairs providing to that sunken area, indicating that there is quite significant grading difference between the College Park as the sunken area. And the next one is showing also the view from the College Park. It's the view looking south. And in the distance, you can see our condos. There is also Chelsea Hotel a building. There's some residential buildings attached to the adjacent to the College Park, and there is behind it a 4-story residential podium on the right-hand side. There is also a mid-block connection connecting the park with the Bay Street. On the left-hand side, a little bit at the front, you can see again that sudden change in elevation between the between the park and the sunken area. On the right-hand side, there is a sunken area in the access from the College Park with the stairs. And on the left-hand side, there is a closer look into the mid-block connection connecting the Yonge Street to College Park. As you see, it's located between the College Park building and the our condo podium. In the distance, you can see the martial parquet, and on the right-hand side, you can see the view of the same connection looked across the Yonge Street from the martial parquet. And the next one, sorry for that, that's the streetscape along Yonge Street, and the street wall, it's a 3-story street wall of the College Park building, and the farther away you can see closer to the College Park and Yonge Street intersection, there's 7-story massing of the College Park building. The College Park building is designated under Part 4 of Ontario Heritage Act. On the in the above, you can see that residential addition, 10-story building. And the next one is the closer view of intersection at the college and Yonge Street, showing closer the building, the College Park building that was previously called Eaton's College Street store. It was mostly specialized in selling some furnishing and homeware tools. On the left-hand side, you can see that 4-story building. This is Old Fellows Home. It's also heritage designated building. And the last view is showing the 19-story condominium on the left-hand side. That's the view from Carlton Street, near the Carlton and Church Street intersection. And on the right-hand side, that's the Toronto Metropolitan University's building, also with heritage designated. And now I pass this to Paul, talking about planning.
Okay, so now we'll deal with the planning policies. So I know everyone's familiar with these, so I'll try to run through them quickly. The first thing is that the site is located within the downtown and central waterfront area in the urban structure map in the OP. So it's an area where we want to target growth, but still acknowledging that there should be some consideration of context and appropriate fit within the area. Next slide. The next thing is the land use designation of the site. So the site itself, outlined in dark blue, that's shown as mixed use areas within the overall official plan. And then I should also say that obviously some of the key policies that will apply will be the official plan heritage policies that speak to conserving the building and locating any new development to be sympathetic to that and really enhance that existing heritage building and structure itself, as well as the rental replacement policies, which will apply here. So part of the new development is going to include a replacement of all of those existing units on the site. Next slide. The next slide is the site is also within the downtown secondary plan. Some of the key policies that apply here. The first one is that the downtown plan establishes 4 different categories for mixed use areas. So it takes that citywide mixed use area, breaks it into 4. And this site itself is identified as a combination of mixed use areas. 1, the majority of the site is identified as that. And then the very southern tip of the site is identified as mixed use areas 2. So these are 2 areas where growth is targeted. Each of those different categories of mixed use areas kind of has a descending scale in terms of growth and intensity. So mixed use areas 1 being the most intense. Other policies that we want to highlight for you is the priority retail streets. So Yonge and College are both identified as priority retail streets. Yonge and College are also both identified as great streets. So we want to target public realm improvements and ensure that they're consistent with the streetscaping and other improvements that are planned along the majority of those corridors. The next thing to note is that the site is within 6 different protected major transit station areas. On August 15th, the minister approved those finally. So there's a modified version of the city's inclusionary zoning policy that will apply here. So we'll be dealing with that. I think that's all we really need to get into for this site, is just identifying that it is in a very transit supportive area. In terms of zoning, it's zoned commercial residential, which of course permits a wide range of commercial, residential, and institutional uses. In terms of some of the next slide, in terms of some of the issues for design focus, the first thing I guess is that there's a number of of design guidelines that apply. Tall building guidelines, downtown, growing up pet friendly, all of those that you're familiar with. In terms of the issues for design focus, just running through these very quickly, you can see in the first slide there were the 2 ground floor plans, just showing the different retail levels that were planned to meet the adjacency of the parkland and the expansion to that's proposed. Just looking at that, so still having kind of a sunken area around it, but treating that grade change differently and how that's treated and resolved. Also looking at the just building on that, the park interface and the edge animation across that, and looking at the sort of landscape that may be possible there. It's still obviously at a very preliminary stage. The next thing is with the parkland dedication itself. Some issues with that are just around the dedication of 3 separate park components. I think we have a slideshow. And it just shows 3 separate sort of green areas on the site rather than one continuous piece that would be the parkland dedication block. So normally park staff want to see it as one continuous area, where here it would be separated, sort of where the 3 green areas are shown here. So that is something that's of concern to staff, and we want to look at more closely. Moving on to the next thing is the conservation strategy. So looking at the original plan for the site, which I know the applicant will be going into in more detail. And then the conservation strategy flowing out from that on the next slide, just showing a detail of the base building that's proposed. So really, this is quite a unique conservation strategy in the city, where it's more of a recreation of what was originally planned rather than the more typical approach where we look for significant step backs and separation and all of that. So looking at this unique approach, we're very close to being done. The next thing, just looking at the base building and how that kind of transitions from the southern elevation with the heritage elevation shown, and then how the new building meets that. Just looking at how that could be effectively done. And then also looking at some of the views that are identified in the official plan, particularly the skyline views. From things like looking over from the DBP and some of the contribution that this project could make to the skyline, given how tall and significant these towers would be, and just how visible they would be from around the city.
And just to sum up, there are the issues for your feedback. Here is proposed parkland dedication, configuration, and integration of the public and private spaces. The second one is potential park edge animation through a lower and upper ground floor retail and programming. And the third one, the completed heritage building and its relationship to the towers above. And the fourth, interface between the heritage building and the new base building facing the park. The fifth is the skyline presence of the towers when viewed from a distance, including those relevant views found on map 7B in Dove. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have an opportunity for the design team to present. We have 20 minutes. I'll signal it's time to start wrapping up. Are we changing places?
You can bring the computer back there.
Sure.
It'll slide it across for you. See any, but that would Right, it's the full submission package, it's not the agreement package, we're just trying to find.
I'm scared to know how long that one is.
Twenty hours, I talk fast.
I've got enough. I have it here, I don't know if there's later.
You could join the meeting on Teams.
Okay. Okay, so. Yeah, if someone could just repeat the sign in. Is it the CH12E 029?
So design review panel
Sorry, so the
for the Wi-Fi, you mean?
Wi-Fi should be City of Toronto guest or City of Toronto business.
Business,
COT
yeah.
business. Okay, got that. And then the sign in is design review. Your username is design review panel. At was it at toronto.ca? And then this, got that so far. So you're typing the skills into duress.
Okay, sorry, it's the username. Sorry,
City of, sorry, design review panel at toronto.ca.
Yeah.
And then the password is, just a second, had it here a minute ago, yes, capital Q, lowercase a, and then the rest are all capitals, BFZS. Okay. Good,
thanks.
okay. Check.
You got it. Okay, so I'll keep going.
Just a question, for your presentation, have you found a way to recombine some of the pages that were split across two screens, or do you have a? Yeah. I think that's you too.
I haven't seen it.
Here you are.
Okay, and then.
Just turn off the camera.
Yeah, it's. Make double checking that the camera and microphone are turned off.
Okay. It's not being shared.
Oh, okay.
Get permission.
Yes.
Yeah, can you? Actually, presentation boards.
All right, well, as you can tell, we're in a moment we need to solve a technical issue. We'll
Yeah.
we'll resume the presentation shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of the heritage. I don't necessarily. Right now, yeah, okay. Yeah.
We have two tests. All right. So it's 1:26. Give you 20 minutes from now.
Well, thanks for your patience. My name is Scott Weir. I'm a partner at ERA Architects. And 25 years ago, I led the, oh, this is not advancing.
Sorry?
The slides aren't advancing on the screen once got, so it's, yeah, it's not linked to Scott.
It's
The
not the
panel
same
will be able
way?
to see that, because, yeah, Scott, I think fine, but they're not showing there,
Mhm.
just so you know.
I'm going to stay out of full screen because sometimes there's glitch. So 25 years ago, I led the efforts for ERA in restoring the car loop on the 7th floor of College Park. So it's with a great deal of pleasure that I get to talk to you about this phase of the project today. College Park, when it was conceived of, was to be one of the most significant works of architecture in Toronto. And as built, actually had an enormous cultural impact and architectural impact, combining as it was the architectural skills of Ross MacDonald, one of our most significant architects from the period, and a Parisian designer named Jacques Carlu. So in the early part of the 20th century, the Eaton's department store, seeing a great deal of success, was watching the movement of the city northward. And their flagship store, their block of buildings between Queen and Dundas, they were seeing the center of the city moving northward. So they worked at trying to do land assembly and shifted their base up to College and Yonge. In its original conception, it was intended to be 700 feet tall, 37-story tower of 4 million square feet. That would be the headquarters and department store for Eaton's. Only a portion of this was built, which you can see in yellow there. And in the past 50 years or so, many of these floors in the built building have been dormant and not really in use for people. They've been in use for TD banking machines and so on. So this has been a bit of a gap in the city. So while College Park has never met its full potential, this proposal is a chance to really re-examine those original design intents and try to get it right. So this is a comparison slide showing the design for College Park on the far right. Next to that, you see the CIBC building, the Royal York, the Maple Leaf Gardens. This building, as intended, would have been the tallest building in Canada, tallest building in the British Empire. And even without the full build-out, College Park is significant. It's designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Part of it is a National Historic Site. There's easements on the interior, on the arcade space that you can see in front of you on the 7th floor and on the exterior. So this is an important building with a great deal of architectural value to it. So rather than really fight that history, this project is really trying to lead with what's the intent of the architecture, what was the heritage value of the space. How do we take these components that are in the building already and use them as a leaping off point? And one of the examples, so just to start off with the arcade, which is one of the easement areas, the easement area being shown in green. This is a space that has been bisected and a number of pieces removed. The intent of this project is really to examine what made it special in the first place and bring that back into the main project and use it as a driver for the ground floor. And you can see in this diagram, this is the kind of reconstructed arcade in its proposed form. What would be occurring here is starting off from restoration of the original design intent, reinstatement of elements that have been lost, providing full accessibility through the floors. And as you can see, it flows upward from Hayter to College Street with many flights of steps in between, and then upward from Yonge Street west to what was the department store floor, and all of those little spaces in between are on slightly different levels. So this is something that the project is excited about improving. Another item is the car loop. Currently, the car loop on the 7th floor. That includes the Eaton Auditorium, the round room, the Clipper rooms, which were a suite of private dining rooms, the lobby associated with it. The intent here is to retain the car loop in place. but also to augment it with pieces that are missing from what would make this a fully functional space for full service of events and conferences and that kind of thing. So I think David is going to get into this a little bit more later. But you can see on this slide, the positioning of the towers has been organized in a way to protect the easement covered areas of the arcade, of the 7th floor. Evolution of the site, the original design intent was to have a tall tower approximately over where the park is in the middle of the block. What was built is the next sketch down on the left, showing this portion of the podium extending at College and Yonge. And then the third slide showing the WZMH apartment building on the top of what had been built as the base of the podium, a 2-story stretch extending down to Tater. And you can see again the positioning of the towers on the upper right is intended to avoid the special spaces of the arcade. So in rebuilding this podium, one of the questions that we really, we're interested in as a design team is how to do a reconstruction of a design intent with integrity, with an architecture that relates to current day, but responds to what was originally intended. So the way we started off was looking at what are the components of the existing building that was actually built and the design for what could have been on Yonge Street. So there's the central podium piece, the colonnade, the attic story, the upper attic, the frieze band, and then doing some more analysis on what are the components within that make it interesting to look at. What gives this life and what makes your eye dance around the page? So there's all these elements that form the historic building, and they don't necessarily need to be slavishly repeated on the new piece, but they need to be responded to. So what we need to do is analyze, understand the DNA of this building, and then be able to take that and say, okay, here's how we're responding to it. And so that would also include looking at the historic building, what's been changed on the historic building, like the windows, things like that, that were part of the original design intent, and seeing what can we restore about this building, along with what makes up the new portion. So this is really, I guess, in summary. So it's a significant and ambitious plan to rebuild this portion of the podium to bring this much density onto a site that has this much heritage in it. But it's the way we're trying to handle that is to lead with heritage as an opportunity rather than encumbrance. So what it's trying to do is restore the arcade, restore and augment the car loop, fulfill the original design intent for the podium, to reinvigorate the public realm both inside the building and outside the building, and to basically bring the importance of College Park as a component of the city, as a building that's a massive building that's at the center of our city that's been sitting in a kind of dormant state for quite some time, to bring that back into the cultural life of the city.
So, we really embrace this idea of leading with heritage. We looked at different schemes, to be honest. We looked at a scheme that, kept the basic building at the corner. But we really felt this wasn't the scheme of just keeping that and then adding on to it. We wanted to embrace the idea of leading with heritage. So, certainly from the beginning, we've always been thinking about this as a building that has a city side that really embraces heritage, which is the facade along Yonge Street that picks up also the scaling facade along College Street, and then has the park side. This diagram kind of shows that as well, right? That the heart of this block is the center of the block is the park, and so we often talk about it as the park side facade and building, and then the city side facade and building. And it really felt like that was the appropriate way to approach the project. We also really wanted to embrace the work of the architect for the car loop, and really kind of look at ways of, maybe bringing some of that down into the planning of some of the other floors. So some of the initial sketches of the ground floor show this kind of elliptical plan of how we could, keep the arcade along Yonge Street, but allow people to float from the corner of Yonge and College, come across College, and then kind of drop down on the west side of the site, kind of loop back into the center of the block, which is the park, and then come back and reconnect to the north-south arcade. So always this idea of trying to find what are the DNA molecules of the project that we could really embrace and use to lead the architecture. We also went back and looked at, what was happening in the world in terms of architecture that influenced this building. And I think, the classic Hugh Ferris drawing in the upper right-hand corner, there are these urban mountains. And what's really interesting about that drawing is if you've ever seen the whole drawing, there's a whole plan of New York with all these urban mountains kind of at strategic intersections. So a lot like the approach that we're taking here in the city, which is to develop density at nodes and along transit nodes. That was a kind of a logical starting place for them. And we think that certainly it was a kind of an idea about architecture that influenced the original design in the lower left-hand side. The thing that doesn't translate into the future with a building concept like this, of course, is the tall tower aspect that we've all embraced as part of the way we approach city building. The project that was built around the same time of this was the Rockefeller Center, which we think does embrace that idea of urbanism in these kind of beautiful, elegant vertical point towers. And that's the kind of connection that we made, kind of said, well, we really like the idea of continuing the facade and the podium and the base of this building, but we need to rethink that tower massing the kind of urban mountain idea. So kind of combination of that podium and these towers form the kind of genesis for the build form up above. In the plan, it is a bit like a department store for urban living today. It has a little bit of everything, and you can go to the different floors and you can kind of experience the market at the base. You can experience concepts for what the ground floor might be like. There's an office, commercial, or flexible commercial space, let's call it. There's a hotel that's being contemplated, but it all starts down at the base here. It has a connection to the park, which Mark will talk about. And we kind of extended the floor plate out a bit to make that connection to the park workable. We also had to surgically drop in the tower cores. So the tower on the north core drops into where the washrooms are in the car loop. The tower in the middle avoids the bulk and the mass of the main heritage building. And then the south tower was a pretty free and clear zone. But of course, we had to respect the setback relative to Yonge Street. So all of that kind of started to influence these plan diagrams. So as you kind of come up, this is the green represents that north-south arcade that we're keeping. The kind of light pink salmon color is that kind of elliptical form that takes you from the corner of College and Yonge, brings you around and south and reconnects you to the park. It really opens up to the park as we kind of drop down. The center of this plan is showing you this idea of how we might be able to program some of that space in different ways. So I'm going to go back here for a minute. You just see that, what we're showing here, which is an early concept, is maybe the ground floor has, food and beverage offering that relates to the hotel, that is maybe got different types of restaurants within that kind of ground floor plane. We've got, residential lobbies that we've had to deal with. We've got access to the elevators that take you up to the commercial flexible space. So there's a lot happening on that ground floor, but it's all anchored by the north-south connection and that elliptical loop that brings you back from the corner to the park. Then we go up through the stack. This could be a large retail floor plate, could be a grocer on this floor that really, again, serves the community and is part of this idea about a department store for urban living that has a bit of everything, but it's more about what you need to work and live and enjoy culture in the city. If you go up through the stack, we've got the commercial office, it's the yellow. The blue is the hotel, the kind of an opportunity for a beautiful hotel that's integrated into a building that has a real heritage history that has extended that to the south. I think about projects like the Ned in London, where they've taken the old bank building and they converted that from a bank building to a hotel with the kind of retail and restaurants at the grade level. It's the same kind of inspiration that we're trying to bring here. So this kind of hotel extends up with the commercial retail. Then you get up to the Carlu floor, which is, culture in the department store. And I think what we're doing is rethinking how to orient that so that you now have a whole kind of venue, part of the venue at least that overlooks the park. So that large purple space at the south end of that main box of the Carlu is an expansion of the Carlu that overlooks the park. Continuing up, you get into these tower floor plates, you get into the amenity levels, the kind of the garden roof terraces that are part of living in the city center. And the size and the scale of this roof is large enough. We think that the amenities here will be a huge draw for the kind of residential community that will emerge. And again, all of this related to this idea of a kind of complex mix of uses that become a department store for urban living. The renderings, I think, were key to this kind of buying into the idea that we're leading with heritage, and we focus a lot on that base. And we really wanted to tie in the south component to the north component, but we wanted to acknowledge the fact that this is a new hotel. You can't stack a hotel into an old kind of floor place, so we had to work with the floor levels, introduce different vertical elements, but all respecting the DNA of the site. Just some rendered views of this idea of the west side of the site being this kind of softer curvilinear form that takes you from College and Yonge all the way through to the park side of the site, away from the city side of the site. On the right, you see a whole bunch of rendered views and images of what the interior of this might look and feel like. And again, respecting and understanding kind of the heritage, the columns that are existing within that building. We don't want to play around with those. We want to bring those back to life, but within a kind of a new retail context. A few rendered views of the look and feel of the exterior, the stepping, the articulation, much like in drawing from Rockefeller Center. And this idea of tying the DNA through 100 years of history, going back to the connection between Rockefeller Center and these urban mountains, and how would you reinterpret that? A few renderings of the base facing the park and how this opens up towards the park. And then just some completed shots that show the kind of the composition. Again, on the left, the city side, which really respects the heritage and the DNA, and on the right, the park side, which really is about the three towers sitting on a new podium, kind of dematerializing as they come down to the base and they make a connection to the park. A whole series of views that was provided that shows the kind of emerging skyline at this point. And this has become and will continue to be, with this form, of an urban mountain, we think. It kind of fits within that context, and these drawings kind of show that. We've provided a series of test views that show the impact of the kind of critical views that the city has asked us to really look at. We think it fits within this context in a very kind of respectful, subtle way. We think that it helps complete this idea of a series of urban mountains along our transit nodes as you look at the skyline from Broadview Park. Then as you kind of work through, you can kind of see how that contributes to that, really acknowledges that. As the scale and the density transforms, we think this is ties in and fits in quite well as this kind of built form emerges. A view from Carlton looking west to the North Tower, which kind of terminates and becomes a view terminus for Carlton, where you get that interesting jog in the street. I will pass it over to Mark.
Thank you, David. Chair, I'm aware of
Just,
yeah.
sorry that you'll have to be at a good pace.
Yeah, I'm seeing
For 2 minutes.
about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so apologies, this will be quite rapid. I think there's been investment in the core of the park as recently as 2018, yet somehow it doesn't feel complete as a project, as a block. So this project, this redevelopment is a chance to strategically look holistically for the first time at the entire block. Obviously, very tangible possibilities for integration, for animation of the edge and that interface of park to built form. That's key here. We're also trying to look at how there can be catalytic effect and bigger conversations with the city over time. We take a lot from the DNA of the project. One of the notable things is how urban culture in the 1930s, the audacity to think it could go from the street to the 7th floor. In that spirit, we look at this project not merely as a ground plane or a surface, or not merely even about edges, but actually as a volume, a spatial idea about a volume of space shaped by light, light hitting surfaces and the relationship of inside outside, the porosity of this building overall, and the return to a more immersive green landscape at its core. Okay, very interestingly, we talked about that sort of northeast quadrant of the park or the southwest quadrant of the development, a chance to really extend the feeling of the park, to grow the park, to get this feeling of a sunken private oasis, to return that to the public experience and the interface with the building, and bring this idea of a forest garden. So here are some images of descending through accessible routes down into this lower terrace. The terrace right at the kind of edge and interface with this conservatory space. This is kind of the iconic volume of light-filled space that would be that kind of culmination of the arcade and the food and beverage offering. It's a multi-height civic scale space at the scale of the park. We see this as an all-season kind of park experience, indoors and out. Some of the curved gardens and interfaces that really want to talk about materiality of inside, outside, enhancing that feeling of a park. We're noting the park dedication element, 530 square meters. We see this as strategic green fingers that extend the feeling of the park and then preserve a pop space that can be activated and animated at that terrace for F&B inside and out. So getting the most maximum sense of green to grow the park and really ensuring that vitality of an edge. Then there's park improvements, of course, that make a bigger picture where you don't really read those lines of private, public, but it feels really well integrated. And of course, that continues indoors all the way to the corner of Yonge College. There's work around the edges on the streetscape. Some of that is really about building the Yonge Toronto plan. I won't say too much. There's ideas about the vitrines being activated to curate micro retail along those edges of the street. There's an opportunity on the roofscape, again, to think about the DNA and what Jacques Carlu and Art Nouveau means to a living garden. These are the eras where garden making and art moderne come together. So there's ideas, and these are conceptual ideas. The roofscape embodies almost open air versions of the Carlu and the round room, and learning from that spatial articulation and the kind of softening of edges across this vast amenitized roofscape. Finally, we're also working inside the property line and outside. These are speculative, collaborative conversations we've already started with the city. They would be going on through time with stakeholders and with the public, but there's chances to do this block right, to think about reinterpretations of the arch, which is a mid-block arch in the bottom right, to think of how that could come to life as a green arch, which is a gateway to the park at Hayter, right across from the McGill Parkette. The presence of the park immediately at the edge of the street, at the street front. And of course, in the language of Jacques Carlu and inspired by some of his works. At the core of the park, there's a chance to reinvigorate vitality. We're speculatively thinking about how you could augment and re-energize that skating rink for all seasons, to take its power in winter, and actually what could we learn to reactivate it with a movable fleet of elements, furnishings, and kind of animating elements that would flow from inside outside seasonally. And finally, just to think about the surface of the park, the sense of green, the microclimate, and how some of the ideas in this first phase could actually maybe over time work their way outwards into the park. And I'm going to stop there because I know we're short on time. Thanks.
Thanks for your presentation. Heard it twice already, but just to remind panel, parkland dedication, edge animation, heritage building in relation to towers, interface of heritage building to the new base, and the style and presence. Those are big topics we're thinking about. An opportunity for questions and clarification. I know in the pre-meeting we realized there are lots of these. So I'm going to go around and look for hands to see who wants to start with the questions or clarification. Okay, Jim, Heather, Anna, Jim, Paul. Okay, so everybody. So we'll start with you, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the first question would be, has there been any thought so far to proposing a second entrance to College Station as part of the development? And the reason I ask that is, as a frequent user of that station, I think the existing facilities are like totally inadequate. Anytime between 8 in the morning and 6 o'clock at night, you know, you're being squashed into a little corridor and then one tiny escalator either up or down, and an equally tiny staircase. So is there any thought?
Sorry, you're talking about once you're outside of the station?
No,
or
I'm talking about integrating a station entrance.
Well, we do have the station entrance into.
I mean, the second entrance at the south end of the platform.
That's a discussion I think that we've had with EPC, although I thought they were opening up a second south part of that.
Okay, well, I don't know if they are or not. I'm just asking or suggesting rather than
Yes.
maybe you should think about that.
I mean, you know, if something could be negotiated with TTC, I think there's room on the east side to allow us to kind of draw people down back into the center, as opposed to just right at the corner. But I thought that there was some work that was already starting to happen on that. I don't know if it's a sparse side or if it's as large and then you might be contemplating, but might be something pressure.
It's just the idea to put into the hopper, basically.
Yeah.
I found trying to get clarity on the strategies for parking and access and loading and bike access to be rather difficult in the 168 pages. Can you maybe just elaborate on that for a moment?
I think at a high level, without getting into that detail, it's piggybacking off of a lot of what's already down there at the lower level. So there is a huge loading dock area that's going to be slightly reconfigured. So that's being accommodated off of the ramp that comes down from Gerard right now. So we're kind of plugging into that. Parking, we are providing very few parking spots in addition to what's already being provided within the whole block. So there's a kind of a nominal amount of parking that we're adding, and access to that is also through that reconfigured loading dock, which is at the bottom of the ramp. So it has been taken into account. It's all factored.
Okay, and bike access, I'm just curious, like, where would people, the large number of people be coming into your complex with their bikes?
Bike access is being provided above grade on some of those floors that I was clicking through where at the hotel level, there was a kind of a whole kind of central portion of that that is accommodating all the bikes.
Sort of like a bike valet situation.
Yeah. So there's an elevator that takes you up and then you get into that and you're into the bike road.
I guess I missed that.
It's not like any other bike road we see. It's there.
Or like a Dutch bike.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we're gonna go around because everyone had questions.
Okay,
You want to
okay.
sequence here, Heather, please?
Yeah, okay, thanks for the presentation, it was great. The relationship of the south tower to the south heritage facade. Can someone just zoom in on that and talk a little bit about it? It feels a little bit deliberately like it's kind of
You know, which,
remnant or kind of two-dimensional.
I think what we are doing is because we're really jumping off that existing ground floor heritage component, that kind of
There was one image near the
Yeah.
building, I can't remember which.
yeah. Well, it could be one of these. We kind of show
Right, it needs to be the cover, right? The cover shows.
Yeah, but maybe I'll describe it
Sure.
in this diagram, because I think what we're trying to do along the steps side here. There is a return of the heritage facade that exists, right? I think it's 2 stories high. And what we did was, instead of extending that even further and then kind of bringing it into the park, we just built up on top of that. And what happens though, in doing that, is that you kind of create this asymmetrical condition where the tower, you can see it here a bit. Oops, sorry. The tower, kind of for a portion of the corner of the tower slides down to the west of that existing heritage facade. So it's not like we're fully bringing that part of the heritage all the way around and completing the corner. We're mostly hanging. Yeah, there's a kind of a hooking of the tower coming down, the heritage facade being constructed and extended up, and they don't quite align, so they create this this idea of dematerializing the tower form as it gets down to the bottom. I think it's fair to say that this whole inside the park side needs a lot of work in terms of resolving the geometries and the kind of complex program and some of these issues. So it's something that we kind of acknowledge.
Okay, and so from Yonge Street, the tower's set back,
Yes.
but then is it coplanar for a portion of the southern facade there? Like
No,
the-
I think it'll still have setbacks relative
Okay.
to the southern facade.
Okay,
They're
looks
just
like
a
the
bit
west
more
bank is kind of, the west bank of units looks quite coplanar with the facade on that.
Right.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah, it's subtle,
Yeah, okay.
so. It's not-
The terrace at level 3, is that associated directly with the flexible commercial and not the hotel? I think it is, but
Yes.
like each of the terraces is actually like exclusively used for the kind of adjacent program, would you say, going up?
Yeah, except that I think,
Okay.
are you referring to, there's
That was-
this level here, this is.
Yeah, where the hotel
Yeah.
overlooks the one that's labeled, it had a weird name in the package, that's what I'm asking.
Ah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I think initially the idea was that is hotel terrace.
yeah,
And
Okay.
then when you get up, that
Okay.
commercial floor plate, there's overlooking the hotel terrace.
okay.
So it's kind of disconnected.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Could you talk a little bit about the materiality of the towers? In some, it looks like, I don't know, stone, terracotta for some of the solid elements. Looks like they're using this idea of bay windows
Yeah.
for the tower on the
Yeah.
most northern portion, just to.
Yeah,
Let's
all three buildings are utilizing this idea of articulated bay expression within
Oh,
the
okay.
kind of framework of the vertical pieces that go up. You know, I think we're all struggling with the kind of percentage of solid to glass.
Mhm.
It might, by the time we're ready to build this, might be even higher than it is now. But I think what we're trying to do is create a series of towers that relate, if you squint to the podium, that they look like they are, you know, not your kind of contemporary.
Yeah.
Stylized towers. They are more towers that draw from the idea of the vertical pilasters,
Yeah.
the bay windows, the articulation of those bay windows.
Great, and, can you just let us know the plate sizes of the 3 towers?
Yes, I don't know if I have that, at my fingertips, but they're rough. They're not 750, they're larger
bigger.
than 750. Yeah, they are a
okay.
bigger tower floor plate, so they're more.
Maybe that's enough for today.
Yes. They're probably, they're probably in the range of 9,000 to 10,000.
Okay.
Some of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I have 2 questions. First is, wanting to give us a bit more information about the arcade and how it's accessible. There's a lot of stepping pieces in there and the raised slopes.
Yeah.
Quite deeply, and then the arcade on the interior is flat, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just wondering how that connection happens to the building.
Yeah, there's a number of transition points that at this phase, we haven't gotten drawn in on this diagram. This is showing, this diagram is really showing the reinstatement of the original materials. But what we've been looking at, there's a few sets of flights of steps that lead from Hayter up to College Street. Those would have accessibility, either elevators or whatever built in. Each of those red spaces is a storefront. Some of them have currently been taken over as exiting for floors above or, you know, for whatever purpose. We're going to be repurposing those storefronts as either punctuations down into the floor below or providing accessibility up to the arcade from one of the main entrances or a little elevator leading up to the floors above. So those really give us some flexibility as to what to do. And then there's the transition from Yonge to Green to the mezzanine. The goal really, we've been testing out, can we fit a ramp within the configuration of a latrine area or not? And so all of those things are being built into the planes of the building as it steps back. And we haven't got that drawing here, but it's in the number of variations that we're testing it.
Appreciate that, thank you. The second was about phasing and the rental building in particular. I did see in the package a bit of a description about how the phasing would work. It's not 100% clear, so I read it quickly. So I'm just wondering if you could give us a quick overview of how the project would be phased.
At a very high level, yes, the north building, after the enabling works kind of remove some of the south building, the existing rental building, kind of create initial stages for construction. The north building is the first building that moves forward, and then it just kind of cascades down from that towards the south at a very high level without kind of getting into the detail of all the enabling works and
So the rental goes first?
yeah, and then the middle building is the second one, and then the third one, of course, is the building in the south end. So
Just a little bit more on that. There's 2 years of kind of on-site preparation work where there's no disruption with the tenants. And then there is a period of about 4 to 5 years where construction of the tower would start and the demolition of the tower would need to occur. So there'd be about 4 to 5 years of off-site displacement. And then the first tower, the north tower, is where the tenant relocation would happen and they would be relocated back on site. So, yeah, that's.
much better.
Thank you.
Just a quick question on the sort of existing sunken area adjacent to the park. So does that slab come out and the loading get reconfigured below? Or is that slab remaining in place?
That slab remains and everything is happening below.
Okay.
And kind of like from the, just like the parkland is sort of feathering, that's why there's some inbound improvements and some outbound improvements, because we're starting to sort of feather on both sides of that line.
Right.
And that's been the sort of collaborative thing with city staff to kind of work at how park improvement beyond the line and inside the line, and allow that not to appear as a wall anyway.
Right. Okay, thank
And
you.
I should just clarify, I mean, there may be openings for enabling works that are required within that slab to get
Mhm.
access to that load. It's all intent is that stays above the loading.
Okay,
At that
thank you. That's all.
Oh. Yeah, my questions really are around just grading and the lower grade versus upper grade in arcade. And I think the axle cutaways maybe are the best. If we could just look at those, and I don't know who wants to take it, but if we could just do a little walk around the perimeter and sort of walk through where we're touching grade versus, I think, big shifts as you go north. And then from memory, isn't there a connection to the adjacent building of the farm boy? Where does that go? And so if you could maybe walk us through kind of like what's public, like if you were here at a 9:30 PM, sort of what's open and the food hall's closed, like I'm just trying to understand how you go public, private. How
Right.
this works together.
So, I mean, I think everything that you see here, the pink and the salmon is all public. That is all in the north or in the kind of up near the intersection. That's the connection to the TTC. That is the existing connection to the TTC. You can see it, the second label from the corner. That is the access, that's secondary access that I was talking about that's being provided or exists right now to the TTC. So from TTC, you'll come out at those 2 points. You'll enter a large kind of food court that'll have a series of food hall, let's call it. From there, you walk to the south, you're facing the park. You're kind of coming in.
At grade.
Yeah, at grade. Yeah, lower grade. And then also at that level, underneath the escalator and underneath the stairs that you see there, there's a connection that goes back to 77 Bay that maintains that connection. Got to work through the details with that owner. But we are kind of being respectful of the existing connection, so the block is interconnected. And then also at this level, at the lower grade, you can see on the right-hand side where the cursor is here, there is another corridor that kind of brings you back up to that TTC link. So the idea is you can circulate north-south along the west side. You can circulate north-south diagonally through the food hall into 77 Bay or back out to the park so that connection kind of maintained. And to the south here, we've got a series of access points that we've got to maintain that make a connection back to building to the south, the Aqua.
So, but that's like a tunnel.
Yeah, the existing tunnel, all that stuff will stay. We'll just have to reconfigure a stair and an
And
elevator.
the daycare, arcade, all of those are at a higher sidewalk level.
Yeah, and then.
Slowly getting up.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that we haven't spent a lot of time on is, we're using sky lobbies here. We're actually bringing residents in. So the yellow that you see here at the south end, this is from Yonge Street. You'll actually come in, you'll go down to this lower level and you'll get access to this residential floor. And the reason we're doing that is we didn't want to populate the whole ground floor with residential lobbies. We wanted them to, people to either, that are residents to come in at this lower elevation, or they will come in at the north end and go up. So for example, if we go to the next floor plan up, these two, you can see where my cursor is. Those two cores take you up to the residential lobby level, which is out of the rooftop.
So if you're in the middle tower,
You're taking one of these elevators and you're going up to a sky lobby. If you're in the north tower, you're coming in here. You're taking an elevator, you're going up to the sky lobby. And what that did was it really freed up the rest of the floor to have all of this kind of public circulation and kind of porosity passageways through here. The north-south one, the arcade, which is stepping up as it goes up to the north. And then this salmon colored elliptical one that kind of comes down. You can see there's a stair, there are escalators, that brings you down.
That's the mezzanine, which is street level, but then over the park, it puts you at a perch, and then you drop down. It's a double, like a triple experience.
And then at this level, you know, we wanted to have the upper ground level for the retail. So this level, you come in at College, at the intersection of College and Yonge, you go upstairs, escalators here that are stacked on top of the escalators that are going down to TTC. Get up to this level, and again, you can circulate around here, which brings you down again to the winter garden space overlooking the park. The idea here is that this large retail floor could be a large grocery store, it could be a series of larger retail floors. It really has to get kind of figured out as we go through the process. And then you've got the cores that are positioned, you know, north, south, and then the big central core, which has the hotel core as well about it. And then if you go up, this again stacked with the hotel and the office. The commercial, flexible commercial office space or commercial retail space, let's call it. Those cores are now essentially where they currently exist, which is along the west side of that ground floor plan where the cursor is here. The Carlu core has also been moved to this west side so that the cultural and the office or the commercial flexible space is all accessed off that west side. You would go up through the stack that way. So that core ends up here in the yellow color. You can see that brings you up to the flexible commercial. The purple is the Carlu core. And the reason we wanted to shift that was because we really wanted to reorient this floor plan so that when you come off the elevator bank at the Carlu floor, you're now able to look directly south towards the park, towards the center of the block, and really make a strong connection to this kind of new expansion of the Carlu, but maintaining the kind of the heritage lobby and all of the, you know, the access to the round room and to the auditorium as well. So it's a bit of a Swiss watch as you kind of work your way up. This floor is showing you the connection now to the sky lobby. So the south core sky lobby brings you across. This is all residential indoor amenity space, access to the main tower. This tower is not connected. It has direct access to the ground floor that I've described. Bit of a long answer, apologies.
you've got to all my questions.
Okay.
Panel members and design team, we're gonna run past 2:30. Is people gonna be okay with that?
Yeah.
Got two more questions of clarification, then the discussion. This is so much complexity. If we're okay, then we'll continue. Is that okay? Thank you. Ima. Oh, Jim. Jim?
Thank you. So I got a few questions for David and then a few questions for Mark. Your historical interpretation of the start of the site starts with the indigenous use. Is there anything contemplated to respect that or in materials or anything in the, or it's too far, too early in the process?
Bit too early. I think we need to look into that, yes.
But you would consider that?
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, thanks for the walk around that you just did for Paul. The daycare has an outside component, but it has a roof. How does that work?
Well, it's kind of sitting actually this line. The reason it has a roof is because one more, yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
This is a daycare, the outdoor daycare. This is that weird condition where we've got the the tower, the south tower overhangs. So it kind of comes out and is sitting on top of this space. So, in order to achieve some of the areas and in order to deal with the complex stacking, we've carved away some of the building volume here. So the idea is that as the tower goes up, it kind of starts to hang out back over to right this way. It's starting to hang out over top of that space. So that is covered.
So that splits out the volume for
Single story.
space, is it glazed?
No, the intention is that
It's open.
yeah, it's open to the outside, covered but open.
Okay, thank you. For Mark, one of your drawings, well, it's interesting, the whole concept of 3D public realm. One of your drawings shows, it states that the Winter Garden has an operable facade. What is that?
We're just trying to get a bit early to say, but it's like we're trying to encourage that there's a really public and open to kind of that seasonal variation in and out. So in summertime, for example, we're starting to suggest the idea of the winter garden and maybe even element furnishings, plants that go in, some migrate inside and out.
So you can walk through this operable facade or just air comes through it?
I think again, it's really early, but conceptually that we want this to feel like it's very public and it's accessible inside and out.
I like that idea very much. The vertical,
But the skin, feels
Yeah.
that when you're inside in the winter, you feel like you're in the park and vice versa, and there's an exchange and it's inviting. That's what.
so the vertical integration of public realm that you speak about, and what we saw from some of David's drawings, there's like a food court, there's kind of like a really nice lobby bar. Are those all part of your public realm and your idea?
Yeah, that's where it's like, both David and I we used the leading with heritage. We even take the DNA of the arcade as being a 1930s expression of urban public realm, interior public realm. And it's almost, in this case, foreshadowed Eden Center. But we're trying to then, when David shows you that loop around, that maybe that's an interesting diagram, the one he was just walking through, but that route to the park, we're starting to see as it wants to have that DNA, like what the grandeur of the arcade at the time. But in this case, it's a prelude to the park. That's been the big story of how you get that prelude to the park from the address at Yonge College and it takes you there. So in some way, we want that to feel public. We want that to be operated in a public way. It's not public space, it's a POPs, but in the same way, there are historical or there are world precedents of how this can be managed. And those are the kind of things that the team's looking at.
So going up in the towers where you get to the outdoor areas, the amenity spaces, those are private, not public amenity, unless it's like a space off a hotel.
Well, yeah, and above that, remember the 7th floor.
Yeah.
That datum of the 7th floor is that's the cultural floor, and that's public. There are outdoor terraces that would flow out of that new car loop.
And that's where you're doing all those half semicircles.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then of course there's spaces on the roof that are more adjacent, more related to residential amenity and
Okay. One last question. You show in your presentation at the end, some options that for the site development that
right.
you call NIC. What's stopping that from being in contract? Why are they NIC?
It's more just, I think that was more in the spirit of a collaborative discussion with city staff. That we begin this, it's a big project, it's a long-term project. We're aware how the growth of the city is so rapid that you can't sort of solve a problem today. You have to be thinking proactively. And so we just don't, it's a bit cart before the horse. I think that has to be done openly and, publicly with consultation. And that's why we're not getting too far. We just wanted to stimulate the beginning of those.
They're really, really, really good ideas. And I think they would add enormously to the public realm. Can you not ask that be part of the developer's responsibility?
You asking that question is already helpful.
Thank you.
But But like, we just sort of, there are property lines and we're being respectful of that, but we also, the client here is special. They're very committed to an ongoing dialogue that's open and public. Okay, there's even some time before construction begins, right? We know this is a big enterprise, so we hope in that time, there could be really fruitful discussion.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Jim.
Short.
It's just understanding sequencing of construction, particularly in relation to what's being kept of the emerging buildings. And what is being demolished and rebuilt. I'm trying to understand like the arcade concept and looking at the drawings and the phasing categories. And it's not clear to me in terms of how it's the tower sequencing works, whether the arcade is being fully demolished and built, whether it's being preserved.
It's preserved, built around.
Yeah.
Built around and over, so it would be built beside in terms of the foundation, and it's become the building comes over there. So yeah, but it's not being removed at all.
So all the spaces that are designated in fact are remaining.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, that was mine.
There's some dismantling on the, so in the lobby of the 7th floor, in the area to the west, on the north side, there's a number of vitrines that are being removed from the wall, taken away while construction is happening, and the vitrines and the light fixtures being put back. But we're being careful, and some stonework and so on that will be relocating, putting back. What we found on the first round, though, was that about 25 years ago, is we now understand the kit parts that makes up this building. There's metalwork, there's glass, there's stone, and then there's plaster. And some of the things that we understand, the things that if we take them away, they're gone, versus the things that if we take them away, they dismantle and they can go back in. So this has been planned so that the things that we would be dismantling are able to go back in the exact location that they were initially, and they'll be what they looked for.
And one last question, just about the materiality that's being planned for the tower, but also for the base roof construction.
We haven't got material yet. I think for the tower proposals and for the base building, I think our intent is that it ties into the existing palette of materials and responds to it in a way that's harmonious, but not exactly the same. So we want this podium to read as a unit, to read as a whole, but so that you can tell that there's something different between the right-hand portion and the lower portion and the new podium. And then similarly with the towers, we've been studying what's the material palette that goes into the storefronts, the light fixtures, the throughout the building, there's palettes of materials and they work in a harmonious way. So pulling that into the tower language, what can you learn from the light fixture on the 7th floor and use that as a way to design, on a larger scale.
Back to your question. First one is the breathing space between you and the tower to the south. Is it enough?
The tower to the side.
Yeah, the
Or, yeah.
30 meters.
I think it's at least 30. So don't recall.
Yeah, here it's the 29.
Yeah.
The second question is, the sustainability language is big. Seems an entire city is over there, and it's an opportunity to add to all the and innovative things you're doing and to actually find a way to declare. We hear it very often in these meetings that it's too early. Can't really talk about that just yet. But is there a way to change that conversation?
Well, I think GWLRA are really committed to sustainability. I mean, maybe we'll have a second presentation where we can focus more on sustainability and they can speak to that, but it's definitely a key consideration. They're very sensitive to it. I think we all are recognizing the importance of that, but yeah, we don't have details for it.
And then it's part of the opportunity to change the language from would or could to am.
Well, I think one of the things that is already embedded in this is considering the embodied energy of the existing building. The building is heritage, but really, everything between the second floor and the seventh floor was gutted previously, and there's not much of interest left there. But the intent has been all the way along to try to retain the embodied energy of this building and needle things through to keep as much of the little farm as possible.
Just the right decision statement. Would appreciate it. All right, well, panel members, now we go to panel discussion. So we are now at 2:21. We have previously allocated 30 minutes for panel discussion. Is that still okay? Okay. We are 7 today. We have 30 minutes, so it's about 3.5, 4 minutes per person, self-managed, if you can. If you don't mind, I'll go in the same order that I asked you for your conflict of interest. So it'll be Anna, Dima, Jim, Melvin, Jim, Goff, Heather, Jessica, and then Paul. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's an incredible project. If I counted the number of times that were completed was used, I think could be way up there. There's an incredible amount of opportunities in here. It really has the making of, word you use this, or the description you had as a city in its own right. And I think one of the biggest opportunities, the public spaces that can be enclosed, both indoor and outdoor. An indoor public space, connected to residential is an opportunity in itself. I think my parents who are wall walkers, if they on a rainy day, an icy day, a snowy day, or anything that's below 10 degrees, they'll go inside and walk. And this kind of place is incredible for them. And for its connectivity to the subway as well. So creating that engaging and well-connected, clear path through the place, I think is very key in the success of that. Can you just flip to slide 17?
Yeah.
Sorry. Because I just wanted to point out on there, you talked about that idea of the loop, and that's what got me thinking about, the mall walkers. When everything's closed, I don't know what the hours of this area would be. I'm assuming that it would be open and accessible 24 hours. The public circulation, I think that's something to consider as well in terms of how it's all set up. And then just in terms of clarity and circulation and how things connect, I do think that some thought has to be put into pickup drop off. The daycare, residences, hotel, there's gonna be a lot of, while we don't have parking, that's okay, that's the way the city's headed. But there is still a certain amount of traffic that comes in for those uses, and taking that off of Yonge Street where, there's that beautiful public realm on either side, and college as well. That requires a little bit of thought. The sky lobby and the entrances. I thought that's a really beautiful way to think about a vertical city. The entrance is not a grade. It does have a clear kind of access onto Yonge Street. Is it Yonge Street where the address is in? Sorry, it's at a different level.
The two sides.
Yeah, so I think that's great. Like, that's your front door. You get up there and that's where you get your mail, you talk to the concierge, and you go up the building. So that made a lot of sense to me. I think somehow on this level, it needs to express itself as well. I wasn't clear, and maybe everybody is clear, but how, if I'm in the mall, it's like, is there a front door and a back door? Is really my question. Front door goes up to the sky lobby, back door, maybe I can just sit down to the grocery store and pick some bags up and go straight up 20 minutes. So just a little bit of clarity on that. I think I'll stop there. The green spaces were beautiful. Everything was so rushed, and it's such an incredibly complex project. I really feel like it's hard to do justice to the thought that's gone into it. I don't know if there's ever special sessions that extend for much longer, but I think this project in itself deserves a lot more view because there's so much in it. I think so much thought already has gone into it. And the last thing I was gonna mention was accessibility. So that arcade and thinking about, I know it's really tricky with heritage and you use immovable pieces. But when clear circulation through a space that's gonna act as a public space for the residents, having those levels, easily navigatable.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. Great project.
For the presentation. I'm gonna maybe just focus on the podium and on some of the heritage aspects. It's quite rare and one has a chance to sort of complete an incomplete project and see how to complete it. And then, but that comes with a certain amount of responsibility of not only doing it properly and obviously recognizing that we're not replicating the original, but doing it in a way where the original building architectural original intent is honored. And I recognize that there's been a lot of work done to understand it. And I'm a little not worried that the materials aren't resolved, because I feel that's so fundamental to how this building works, and not just in the choice of materials, but sort of there's an original construction system that is the articulations of the original elevations speak to kind of like there needs to be like hybrid structures, there's depth to them, there's an articulation, and that has to sort of translate to the new. And often when new is sort of having this old look, it tends to be too flat and two-dimensional, and it's going to be very important that those details get resolved, or else the extension is just going to feel like theater backdrop, and it's not going to feel like an actual architectural building that is being honored and created. So that goes not just the material, but the articulation of the windows and the rhythms and the proportions. And it also goes to the question how the building turns the corner. And I think there's a real challenge, and I'm looking at the 3D that's maybe on the second page of our report or the third page of our report, where we look at how the original buildings look to turn the corner, or that, and its relationship to the tower that comes down. I think there's a bit of work to be done there, because all of a sudden this three-dimensional building starts to look like a two-dimensional construct. And it may even benefit linking you this, you spoke to city side and park side about having some of that, masonry rhythm facades actually turn into the park. So there's a more of a embracing of like the original building intent, sort of more embraces into the park. And there isn't such a dichotomy and difference between what's on the park side and the city side. At the moment, they don't seem to connect at all. And I think there may be some benefit to keeping that story going all the way around. If you're leading by heritage, you kind of leave it all completely when you're at the back. The other, the challenge of those towers, I heard a lot leading by heritage, but I'll confess that I'm not seeing that in the tower architecture or massing at the moment. I mean, the precedence being given, you're looking at that huge urban mountain. Towers, mountain, I think, triangle, and towers are little peaks, the way the urban forests, like you relay. We're not quite hitting mountain in our city. That's what we're going for. But whether it is the Rockefeller Center or the image you showed, like the original designs for the site, there's something there's a very, very strong relationship between the tower and the podiums, and then also how the towers relate to grade. And they are very, very clear, simple expressions. There's symmetry. There is, long continuous lines. If you're looking at Rockefeller, there's the same materials being replicated from tower to grade. There's a simplicity, that expression, and the towers at the moment feel a little too busy for what they're seeing. And that would really benefit if they retain an articulation and depth into the facade, but the rhythm of their structure and the rhythm of panels like going in and out, and how, especially also how they terminate. The one on the south, it's like abruptly end. There needs to be some relationship of how these the whole history of 1930s towers and the relationship with the sky. If that's part of the language that's being preserved, is how those towers end as well, and the top is also very, very important. I recognize the complexity of the project getting all with them in there, and I just hope that at the moment, I'm a bit hesitant about sort of the relationship between the towers and the podium, the articulation, making sure the articulation of the podium is actually taken to the intent is seen at the end, because there's some really key questions that's next.
Yeah. Next we'll have Chip.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you for the presentation. It's an incredible project. So I'll start on page 1. GWLRA, investors in product of the building. I'm not sure they're making a community for families here, which is okay. I think that the community that is being built doesn't have enough. You, with your experience at the bottom of Yonge Street, you built you designed into it a rec center, a library, all of those things that make a community. I don't see that in this design, so I don't think it's geared families, even though they've got a graphic that says 2 and 3 bedroom units or family units. They're just bigger units. They're not really families, because I can't see family living here. I think what this design is going to be perfect is a naturally occurring retirement community, just like Manulife is. You live there like an old guy like me, like you. We don't have to leave the building, and we can get everything we need right there. So I think that's the community that is being catered to here, because it's such a program dominant building that it's, even though there's daycare strictly, that it's the programs that happen and how you fill those spaces that'll make the building a success. So that's the first thing. So then if I go to building super tall, not an architect, but I think architects should think about in super tall buildings, what happens when people have to wait at an elevator? And the elevator spaces, now your floor plans are bigger than 750. Can't we make those more amenable to meeting, discussing, community kind of interaction? Views to the outside, a little wider corridors, because those are the spaces now that become the road, the interface of the residents. So somehow and then the facilities, how can the facilities respond to the residents' needs? How far they have to travel with their dog ready to take a leak? You know, how often do those happen in a super tall? That's a question for architects, but I think that those are good questions to ask when you start getting into those heights. And then finally, the park in the Winter Garden. This panel in like 2017, I'll say, Michael, we reviewed College Park, or the redo of College Park. Everyone on the panel said, you gotta get rid of the pit. You gotta make that connection. This does it in an elegant way. I love the Winter Garden. It's wonderful. It's a view. I can just imagine walking through that and feeling the indoor and outdoor relationship. That's why I also think all your ideas need to be discussed more thoroughly with the city, and the developer needs to get on board about movable furniture, the what did you call it? The arch, the arch component, the ring or the lighting. That's what's his name from Montreal? But Cormier's big ring. So I think those kind of things need to bring the excitement of the space, because the park can't take another 6,000 people. It'll get trampled to death. But with those kind of elements, I think it'll go to a better success for the project. And then finally, there's the one view of City Hall from the south side of Queen Street. You take the sky away. That's the unfortunate one. I don't think there's anything to do about it, but I'm gonna miss that. The division of the two halves of City Hall. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Jim. Jim Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. There seems to be a really good level of respect for the heritage aspects of the building, so I really applaud you for that. It's a very important building in the city. So it's good to see that idea of a forest canopy with diverse underplantings in the park space, to really bring nature into the city and to increase the city's canopy as well. I thought the green arch to the park is a good way of both echoing the building design and drawing people into that space, which I think a lot of people on Yonge Street just don't ever consider passing through there unless it's a nice shortcut for them. Further to Jim's comments about community, you are building some units for families, but so far there's no family immunities at ground level. And I think there needs to be civic space for social interaction with everybody at ground level. So I would like to see something in the park like interactive fountains or play spaces, to bring everyone together in a public space, to help build a livable community here. Notwithstanding Jim's comments about old people, sorry, Jim, I'll live wherever I want. And I may go outside sometimes. And if I understand correctly, your bike valet entrance is off Yonge Street. Now, if I'm wrong, ignore my comment, but I don't think Yonge Street is a great location for that in terms of conflicts with pedestrians on Yonge. So I would suggest reviewing that. As someone mentioned, I think the pickup drop-off strategy is going to need further thought with respect to the hotel and the daycare and the other uses. I think discussion with the TTC regarding a second subway entrance really should be initiated very soon. The minimal existing facilities are just like totally inadequate, and this could easily overwhelm them. Based on the number of times I walk through College Park and come into the kind of glass-faced space on the southwest, I find that problematic now. You come from this very dark space, by the grocery store or in the arcade or whatever, and suddenly you're blasted with this sunlight, especially in the afternoon. It's hot and it's overwhelmingly bright. So I think you need to just think about that, given that you are proposing this large glass conservatory facing southwest. So just think about that in terms of, what is it really faced with? Are there ways to mitigate the high intensity sunlight that's going to be there? And I would echo the chairman's comments regarding sustainability. I look forward to a more detailed sustainability strategy, and also Dima's comments regarding integrating some heritage inspiration into the building design. That's kind of what I was looking for as I started going through your presentation, looking for a bit more of that. And the two northerly towers seem a bit generic, really, and finally, I don't mean to be overly picky, but I did find the material provided in advance of the meeting was overwhelming. I found that really hard to review on my little laptop. Maybe some of these people have multiple screens that they can look at things on. I don't. I'm retired. I have this, So I think to facilitate getting our insights, I think the material needs to be presented in a way that is more easily accessible. Thank you.
Jim, next to Senator.
I have to laugh, it's on the screen there, but it says, this appears to be a very long document. Save time by reviewing the chaos.
I need to jump into the year 2023.
I was gonna make almost an opposite comment and maybe similar to Anna's, that just like, we need a longer session, I think, for this project. It's just very complicated and it was frustrating when I know from the old days, when you guys used to come in, we used to get the printed document in advance that all of this was meant to be a spread, and so you're like trying to someone in my office said, oh, open it in blue beam, that'll be better, whatever. I'm like, oh my God, I can't take it. But anyway, it's a really, handsome document. There's just a lot of stuff to go through. So, with respect to the three towers and their placement, actually like that the tower at the corner is a bit of a different tower, arguably maybe simpler, and that the two southern towers are more like sisters or twins. I do think that the center tower though is just that much taller, and that I think to have the same kind of intention of stepping at the top of the building to kind of meet the sky, to Dima's point that those steps need to be actually just bigger in proportion, because right now the two towers are kind of the same. And I think when you look up at the center tower, you just don't notice that stepping because it's just too far away. So maybe taking another look at that, the kind of the scale quality. Also with respect to the kind of solid vertical lines that the tower designs rely upon. Acknowledging that I think maybe it's early days for some of the details within the design, I find the lines are a bit blunt. So at the tops and the bottoms, actually, how they resolve. So liking the precedents that you're showing with respect to the Rockefeller Center, and I think a lot of these vertical bands kind of feather or step, you're probably not at that stage of the design, but looking for those to dissolve a little bit or like, be feathered or eased is probably something you're going to get to. I appreciate some of the bigger ideas, the kind of ghost facade and the ribbon. I think they're quite strong. Really happy to hear that the arcade and the vitrines will be restored and reinstated, because really in the building right now, as a person in the public realm, when you walk into that area of the building, you can feel, that's where you can really feel the kind of former grandeur of that building. Not everyone gets up to the car loop, but everyone kind of appreciates the arcade. I like the idea of the sky lobbies, and I think you can sort of build community at that level for the residents. So I think that is great. With respect to materiality, I agree with some of the comments that Dima has mentioned, and I was fishing a little bit in my question about it. And in some ways, I was just led to look up the Shop Architects project at 111 West 57, the Steinway Tower, which has the very vertical use of terracotta with some, some also like filigree detail as well. That building steps a lot at the top, but I think there might be some hints there. I mean, it would be great if this could be terracotta. On page 88, I think there's a kind of small decorative crown that you're starting to show on the south tower at the top. I just don't think it's a bold enough move. I think it could be like double scale. With respect to the landscape, I really appreciate the comment. I think Jim mentioned like moving beyond the 2D thinking. That maybe the idea for the design as it is now, and when it was looked at 10 years ago, is an idea about lots of people looking down on this park in plan, but really there are many, many more people experiencing it as a pedestrian. So for sure, it kind of just really, it really sort of reeks of that like 2D design. So it's a great observation. I like the terracing around the park and the idea of sides. I do think though that some of those sides are not public space, so not everyone will be able to experience that. And so encouraging the project to be able to invite in as many people to as many of those spaces as possible. I love the conservatory. To my mind, I think it needs to be more green. So if there's more species or more of an arboretum, I think that would be great. I also really liked the Lady Eaton curtain vein of thinking, and really think maybe we could lean into that a little bit more. Could this be more of a kind of permanent element on the glass of the conservatory? I think it's a shame, however, when we get to the view analysis, that the building is kind of infringing on the old city hall and the new city hall views. So that's why I was asking the question about the size of the plates, because I don't think you're ever going to be able to fully mitigate those views. But if you can maybe show an improvement and shave a little bit off the west side of the northern and center tower, you might be able to get some improvement. But like Jim, the view with new city hall and that one view from the east with the space between the two towers filled in, I think I went, but I saw that right at the end of the document. The visionary framework that is out of scope, I would strongly recommend that it comes into the scope. You've heard that from others. I think the green arch and that kind of floating circle are the kind of bold ideas that you speak about in the beginning of the description of the landscape. They're actually more bold than the ideas that are in the project now. So I really think they need to be given their kind of due recognition. I don't have any issue with the height or density, and it would be great if this project could come back to the panel. To my thoughts.
Good. Next we have Jessica, followed by Paul.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation and the very, very thorough package. There's so many wonderful and exciting things and components to this project, and I really enjoyed having it presented. So thank you very much. I think there's equally many challenges, obviously, especially with the grading challenges, but I think it's a challenge that this team's certainly tackling well. I'd like to echo some of the comments from other panel members about the sort of really positive quality of the public nature of the ground floor and the porosity, and sort of including that interior space as part of public realm. I think when we talk about space like that, it changes how we consider movement through this block. I also would agree with some of the comments around that south facade, sort of as it turns the corner and the condition with the daycare space there. With regards to the interface of the project to the existing public park, I really appreciate the consideration of the views out from the conservatory, and the sort of modification of that sort of facade to be much more open and glazed and sort of permit this conversation between the two. I guess, however, because it sort of pushes out into that sort of sunken area, it's putting a lot of pressure on what that new outdoor space can do. And I think, and you've got the challenges of the pressure from below as well. So I think, it's a really interesting approach to mitigating those two areas with this idea of the forest and bringing that greenery down into the space. I almost wonder, is there another connection that can be made from another level that comes across this open space that just increases the amount of porosity so that you can come from the sort of ground level and enter into the park through like a bridge or something that doesn't necessitate going down and coming back up. I also, it was interesting to see how the parkland dedication happened. I think, in an incredibly important location like this, with such a high density, a large site, increasing public parkland is really important. And of course, understanding constraints, I think that just makes it even more important to encourage you to continue those conversations with parks and the city about improvements to the existing parkland. it's had a lot of attention, it's heavily used, and, you know, you can see that as the population changes, different needs arise, and so I think continuing that conversation about those potential improvements is really, really important. I also really like the strategy of providing a variety of uses on the upper amenities to reduce that pressure kind of felt at grade. I mean, it's a lot of different uses, so if things start to get pinched, and maybe that's where we start to see daycares getting, you know, a little hemmed in. But I think there's lots of opportunity here in terms of what can be provided on those levels. And really just thinking really creatively about what's going up there for the people who are gonna be here, because it is gonna be, you know, where so many people are gonna live. So, you know, you've got your hotel terraces, daycare terraces, residential, commercial, there's a lot of occupants, so just being very careful about that's important. And then last comment would just be, just the streetscape edges. I know there's a lot of anticipated work and a lot of planning already done by the city. I'd encourage to keep looking at that, because we all know our streets are important connections, and making sure we get that one tree in is just is super important. And if it could be 3, even better. But thank you, really exciting project.
So much, Jessica. Fine.
So I'm trying to kind of consolidate thoughts from a whole bunch of things, but I'll focus in on the idea that you're creating a kind of secondary public realm. And it's at times struggling to compete with the existing public realm of the city, and then you've got this interior one, and getting the balance right is going to be kind of the difference between this working or not, and it's incredibly complicated because you've got the TTC that has different operating hours from retail, from the hotel, from the rest, and the daycare wants its security, and so there's a desire to separate them all for both those reasons and operational maintenance, but I think there's at the risk of missed opportunity to kind of stitch and weave them together. And I see good working to stitch and weave those all over the place. And so I'd say don't abandon that impulse, but I think continue working on it. And so I'd love to see almost like, because you're building a kind of neighborhood, almost a streets diagram like you would at an urban design scale that actually captures everything from the subway through your food court, through the, whatever we're calling it, the window garden to 7-7 Bay as a kind of continuum of public realm. And then use that to maybe refine some of those decisions. And I think there's kind of you're at a bit of a fork of the road where everybody gets their own door, the rest has their own door, the daycare has their own door. But wouldn't it be interesting if you actually had everyone going through the atrium, have 2 major doors at the end or something? Maybe it's everyone goes through the sun, what do we call it, the winter gardens, archery, to the subway at the other end. And then as a resident, I actually participate in that as a daycare drop off. I go through that one entrance, and then you then inside that atrium find a sort of second place. And then, you know, how can you add in those extra layers of programming beyond sort of a retail commercial pathy thing to start to capture maybe some of the amenity spaces or third spaces that are typically residential and kind of off to the side, or maybe at a kind of third level of the atrium that's past a kind of concierge, but still overlooks and you can hear and participate in that. And so I've been looking at, but there's a lot of these West Coast US apartment rentals that seem to do that, where I think the weather forces people into the atrium, so it becomes an attractive thing as a public passerby, but then they become these rich things. So someone as a resident can come off and in your pajamas and slippers still go to the supermarket, but then I might pass by somebody else on their way to the subway. So you create this sort of intermediate space. Now, that's one vision. If you do that, internalize everything, then the street suffers. So I think you got to be careful. So the other examples, the kind of New West Bank Center I was looking up, is a upgraded 60s office building in Seattle, where they have 3-story atrium and they populated. I was looking at the arcade, those little retail spaces. Can those be the little coffee shops that mediate the inside, so you can have a walk-up counter and the seating on the inside mediates the grade change. It's not actually open to the public, but it's just where the staff work. What are those kinds of things you can pop into those things, spots that start to bridge and keep it permeable, and how can the hotel bellhop or other kind of functions exist in those red rectangles to make sure that that atrium and everything kind of has a 24/7 life to it. So that just gets to answer the actual questions from staff about the park and the parkland dedication. I think that's my concern right now, is there's some park dedication that feels like it's part of the commercial piece. And I think it should be both. Like we should have more minor center parks, but it can also be the back end that is closed after 9 p.m. when the food court's closed. Is there a way to stitch those together so that it's a public space and a commercial space and it works for everybody, but not the back end where nefarious things happen after the doors shut at 9 p.m. So, I think as a part of the dedication, it works, but we just need to kind of stitch all those bits together. Yeah, so I don't have a clear idea, but I think it's sort of there, and I think that's where I focus on the skyline stuff. I'm not too concerned about the overall citywide skyline, the city hall views, I think that there are others, and Tim's touched on there, I think, so it's not good at that.
Thank you, Paul. To say lots of strong comments, good observations about places to continue to evolve this remarkable project. I'm taken aback because to me, this project represents a remarkable expression of confidence in the civic life of Toronto. And to me, that's, sometimes you can hear lots to the contrary. This is not that, it's the opposite of that. And it's a meaningful recognition of Toronto's history, which we often get the opposite of that. And so we've seen two things that are showing optimism and vision. And we have presentations at Design Review Panel where we can feel skeptical of the vision. And now, for some of us, almost verging on 2 decades at the panel, we've seen projects by this team come to the panel and be constructed, and now we can occupy. And we know that this is a remarkable team that has fulfilled some of the most dense, challenging projects in the city, and have created a new metropolis through those projects. So for that, we see these drawings and diagrams differently than we would have before, I would say. Just to mention a few, Portland Center, well, the East Artist Walk, all those places that we've reviewed many times. We can look at these drawings and we can see evidence of the possibility much more strongly than maybe other presentations that we see. So with that, we heard, is there possible further development which could acknowledge those important sightlines of City Hall? And we know that places like the High Line in New York City, lots of shaping, cutting, carving has been asked of other tower designers and clients to try to recognize daylight access. In those cases, different here. This is view cone access, view cone conformance. So is something like that possible to take it over the finish line? Pick up and drop off. We know that this is an urban type which is unfamiliar to us in the city, maybe in other parts of the world more familiar, but how does one acknowledge an all transit-based, no parking environment so that pick up and drop off is right? And it's one thing for it to be for the hotel, it's another thing for this very generous, significant daycare. But we know that it can work for other occupancies. Hearing that story more clearly, resolving it more clearly, I think that would be great. And then the question of the animation of the edge of the park. I'm struck by how much better it is than any previous version we've seen at the panel for College Park. At the same time, one of the things that we've heard is what does that glass edge mean between the occupied interior civic space and the occupied exterior civic space? One possible comment would be, how does one occupy that? Can one occupy that edge, or is it really just transparency? Four Seasons Center for the Performing Arts showed how one can occupy edges. There are other ways to do it. How can that be part of this story? We've heard about materiality and the great presence that the College Park has had, not just as a building form, as a material presence in the city. And once again, we know that material exploration and interpretation in recent projects by this team has shown ingenuity and exploration. So we have some sense, but it's hard to tell this early in the, when we're talking about the massing of the overall vision. Sky lobbies, sometimes seen around the world, but new-ish to Toronto. We heard questions about being confident about how the front door, back door aspect, the flow, making sure that everyone knows that it's clear. Because it's a civic space, but also for the project's future success. I would say comments about recognizing, what did you call it? Not just NARCs, naturally occurring retirement communities, but families. And there's so much of richness that's in this project, in its cultural approach, in the approach to civic space on the street and within the reconceived park. But could it also include more about families in the way that we know is difficult to do, but makes it possible for that diversity in occupancy to be more secure, for us to be more confident about that. I'm supposed to only review 5 key points. Maybe one last thing, and it is really, because we really do hope we'll see this again. We'll see it evolve. It was really a challenge to review the document with split pages. If it's possible for us to see it the way that you presented it today, combined next time, it'll allow us to give you even better comments than you got today. And with that, thank you very much for this inspiring part, potential part of Toronto to be fulfilled.
Your point from earlier, just reiterate sustainability, if you could, but that's also.
We think that there's an opportunity for the project at this scale and importance to also have a significant. And we know now, 20 years into the sustainability, the Toronto Green Standard and other sustainability measures, it doesn't always express itself in the form of the building, in the expression of the building, but it can. But having that be something significant will, I think, be one more way to recognize this as future looking as the rest of the project feels.
It was your point, but it was important.
And with that, we can close the session. Thanks very much, everyone.
Sure.
Oh, pardon me.
We just give them.
Jim, would you like to chair? Great. Please tell me there is a vote. Maria, could you put the conditions of the vote on these videos?
I have a point on this,
Sure.
that this is a zoning and bylaw review stage. So our vote would be related to those aspects.
Density,
Not
massing,
not
public.
the questions that we asked and those kind of answers we're seeking. That might come at a next presentation.
With the exception of in these kinds of projects, with the exception of shadow impact and skyline presence and impact on heritage views, you're correct. And remembering that all the comments that have been made are recorded as part of the meetings. So, Maria, do you want to oops.
Yeah, I shared this.
Michael, is your point on the heritage views of the city hall one, that would have to be raised now as a condition? As a condition.
Correct. Thank you for interpreting it that way. That's correct.
That was.
So, I can read it if you'd like. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so, it's intended to provide emphasis and clarity to the discussion and an indication of how well the project advances the panel's mandated quality design excellence. Voting options are support, which means the project meets the relevant design excellence objectives. The panel advises that the project should continue in the proposed direction and include refinements that were recommended during the review. All our comments. This option can be made with key conditions, if so desired. We're talking about that now. And then non-support means the project does not meet fundamental design excellence objectives. The panel advises that the project should be substantially redesigned to address the issues identified during the discussion. So it's my job now to ask if there are conditions of support.
On the view sheds to new and old city hall. I never make conditions, so I'm just.
And here's first condition.
Yeah.
Okay. So panel, we can choose now to accept that condition. And then be voting with that condition if it's a vote of support.
Move to second.
Second, okay. Moved and seconded. Okay, thank you. So I'll go around and ask you for your vote of support with condition or non-support. Paul? Support. Jim?
Support.
Ema? Support. Jim?
Support.
Heather?
Support.
Support. Jessica?
Support.
Support. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. Continue to work in the.
David, for this month with your team making the models.
Andy will.